hot, steamy poop. That's the source of all my problems here, inside of Oxygen Not Included, because my mealwood farm is cooking itself to death. Well, it's not necessarily hot, steamy poop. It's the fact that my compost pile over here is actually giving off dirt, and that dirt is at 35 degrees Celsius, or in this case 34.1, which is just about 35 degrees Celsius. And my mealwood farm here can only go up to 30 degrees Celsius, as was pointed out by Jark09. It says the body temperature on the farm is from the hot compost dirt you are starting to deliver. So what I got to do here is something that I knew I was going to have to do from the very, very beginning, and that is create a cooling loop inside of my base. Now, there's a couple different ways we could do this, using thermal regulators and using, aqua tuners and all of that fun stuff. But the most efficient way to use like a radiator system is to have something that is already very cold, which will have this access to this nice cold biome. And what I do is I just create a loop that's over here, stick an automation sensor on that so the gas or liquid that flows into that will then cool until it reaches a certain temperature. Down here we can see that there's going to be a gas pipe thermal sensor right here. And then once that activates or becomes true, then the valve opens and that gas flows on over. So that would be cold gas at that point. It's going to flow on over here, and then it'll go behind these plants here, as was mentioned by other comments up here. So Pastorino was talking about how you can actually cool effectively a farm by just cooling the plant. So I think I'll try that. I'll try to use some radiant gas pipes for this setup right here and just put it directly behind the plants. And then once again, using that thermal sensor, I will then turn on and off a shutoff valve, which will allow that gas to flow on out. I can also stage it beforehand. So basically, this is going to be a self-regulating system that doesn't really require much power, because all I'm doing is running a couple of gas shutoff valves, which only cost 10 watts, which is way, way less. And that's a lot less power when you compare that to something like a thermal regulator, which uses 240 watts. Although that uses it intermittent, not all the time, just kind of every once in a while. So, we'll see exactly how all of this goes. That should be a fairly simple build to build right here, and that'll get us started, but it's definitely not going to be the end of all the stuff that we need to do today. But I'm going to go ahead and cue that up. So one of the main advantages that I have over here is I have access to wolframite. You can see that over there. And wolframite has very nice high thermal conductivity. And I can even refine that to make it even fancier. So I'm just going to build my way over here, and then I'm just going to build a little bit of a radiator, and that's where I'm going to start. Now this is kind of a long run, but luckily I should be able to take care of it without too much problem. And all I need is a bunch of abyssalite pipe until I actually get to the part that needs to be, radiant. So this will be abyssalite here, and then we're going to switch to radiant, and then be abyssalite after that. Gotta turn the priority down on that. Figure out where do I want... So now I need to figure out where do I want to convey that. So a good question here is, am I going to have enough time in order to get this thing built? So I've got 25,000 calories here, and I do consume enough of it with 5 duplicates. So can I build this thing in about 5 cycles? That's kind of the question. Or do I go ahead and throw some ice over here and just kind of have this, at least function for a little while? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to plant a couple more farm tiles up here, just so I'm actually, prepared. Matter of fact, we have a shine nymph up here, so we actually have some light. Might be able to get a bristle blossom to grow. Let's give it a try. There's also some conversation about overcrowding as far as these different ranches are concerned. And there's some different thoughts. One of them is being as far as like how much space do they actually have to run around, being one of the possibilities of why, they might get this overcrowded debuff. The other thing is also trying to expand the area here, so I kind of opened up this door, and that seems to keep them kind of happy. But then you can see they get overcrowded every once in a while. So I think it has to do with proximity. There was actually one conversation about that, and I thought, you know what? If these critters have a place to jump around, they can kind of jump one tile up, and they can just kind of hop all over the place. I should be able to get quite a few more critters inside of this ranch over here and avoid the overcrowded debuff. I suppose another source of food would actually be just the critters themselves or the eggs that they're dropping. So I think I should be all right on the food front. And it looks like this is getting built in a hurry, so that's good. The nice thing is I can build Abyssite very, very quickly here because I actually dug through quite a bit of it just to get over here. So that's pretty nice. Everything's getting built very, very quickly. So another thing I'll need is some power in order to run that. So I'll just string one over there. So my cold pipe is going to be the top one, and then hot is going to be the bottom one. So this will be out, and this will be in. You know what? I also have a whole bunch of sleet wheat grain, so I should be definitely okay on food. I'll just queue up some frost buns, and yeah. Oh, looks like I might have... Yes! Check this out, guys. I have a thermal nullifier. So that unit right there actually takes in a little bit of hydrogen, and it will trade it, you know, it'll destroy a bunch of heat. So right away, I have something that is going to work even better than just using the atmosphere down here. That is going to be fantastic. So I'm going to build up to that in a hurry so I can uncover that and hopefully make use of that here in the next episode or so. One of the questions I keep getting as far as this challenge is concerned is what is your goal? When do you know when you're actually going to end? And my goal for this base and this challenge is to go until I have automated everything that I can possibly automate. So I can automate farms, and I can automate the fact that farms should be able to run or not run depending on how much food I have. Ranches to a certain degree can be fully automated. So I want to achieve the maximum amount of automation that I can in each area of the game. And then once my duplicates more or less have absolutely nothing to do, then I'll have achieved my goal. Now the original idea was that I was only going to do 10 episodes. I can tell you right now that it's going to take more than that. But then again, this also seems like it's a pretty good challenge, and there's a lot of spin-offs that I've had that kind of lead to different experiments and, you know, different kind of tutorial-like ideas. For example, this one down here, which was a conveyor tutorial, more or less. And that is our automatic storage and retrieval system down here, which is not really functioning as anything more than a storage system at the moment, but eventually that will be hopefully used to do that. Okay, so I want to make sure that this stuff gets done, because I do need it to get done. Sub-priority 6, we're going to build all of this. Hop to it, Bubbles. Get to work. You're making a mess, Bubbles. Come on now. Clean all that up. You know, once I started using exosuits, look at the stress. We're now down to 1%. It's worked out really good. You know, one of the other thoughts I had is potentially sub-challenges. Just trying to build certain types of systems within, you know, this system as well. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges I'd like to do, and you guys recommend a lot of them. I think one of the fun ideas that came next was, you know, trying to build a space base to start up there and then build down from, you know, from up there. All sorts of things. I'd love to do it all, but you know what? I only got so much time. So I'm going to do what I can, and we're just going to keep going with that. So one of the other questions that I read over here, and I've read it a couple different times as well, is why am I trying to use oil to cool my base? You know, and it all has to do with its freezing point, because it can go down to negative 40 degrees Celsius. And if you actually look at the temperatures that a Wheezewort can really maintain, it's not quite to the point where it can freeze crude oil. So if I were to pump water through a system, it could potentially turn to ice, and then that would destroy the pipes. However, oil doesn't have that problem. Water would be a fair bit more effective because it has a much higher specific heat capacity. So as I'm moving, you know, from one spot to the next, I could potentially cool a fair bit more, but you know, that's really not that important when we're talking about liquids. For gas, I'm going to use hydrogen. When it comes to doing a gas system to cool a room, like this little farm over here, I'm going to use hydrogen. Now, the reason I'm using hydrogen is because it has a specific heat capacity of 2.4 with a fairly high thermal conductivity for the available gases that we have. Not to say that oxygen or something like that wouldn't work, but the fact is you're simply going to have to move more of it, because if you look at its specific heat capacity, it's 1, with the thermal conductivity being quite a bit less. The thermal conductivity now is a little bit different than it was in previous versions of the game, so things are averaged out a little bit more And since we're using radiant pipes, it's going to work pretty much no matter what we do. So what I want to do is to enable this thing to run. So if I need to cool it down, it's going to run. So remember what side was cold. Remember we got a abyssalite that we're using, and it's cold. So cold is coming in on the top pipe, and then cold is now going to enter this valve, and it has two choices, to go up or down. At this point, I'm going to switch over to radiant pipe, and I'm going to use wolframite. And wolframite is going to cover these plants here. So that's where the cooling effect is going to happen, right here. And right here as well. So at this point, the gas is going to be heating up. And I want to sense, once that gas is heated up past a certain number, and then take that gas away to be cooled in the cold biome. So I'm going to put a thermal sensor over here, and I'm just going to continue to use radiant pipes. The reason I'm still using radiant pipes at this point is because I want the thermal transfer to continue to happen. If I were to put it inside of like an abyssalite or something like that, then the gas I'm sensing isn't actually going to really change temperature. So now I have a known amount, I'll be able to determine what temperature this is inside of here, essentially. And then I can flip right back on over to abyssalite as I'm leaving that. And then as close by as possible, I want to be able to actually put a gas shutoff valve, which is not really going to happen anywhere nearby. I can sneak one in up here, so that's not too bad. I just have a couple of tiles that are basically wasted space. So using abyssalite, I enter here, and that's where I then can shut off the flow. So this will all be cold, and as it's warming up, I will then just bring this up and try to find a spot to bring it back on over. Crap. So that's the system on this end. So there's 26 tiles over here. That means I want to be able to store about 26 tiles worth of gas over here on the left. And that's more. So that'll work out just fine. So this also means that I need to have a valve so that I can charge this system with some hydrogen. So very similar to what I did over here to kind of pump some hydrogen into that area. I'm just going to tap into this system. Okay, so I've noticed over here on the left is that this system is in demand quite a bit more because I'm pulling hydrogen away from it. So it's actually not able to charge itself up as much. It's also having some issues as far as damaging itself as far as the wires are concerned. So I'm going to add a switch here to turn this thing off for now. I'm going to rely more on coal, which actually has been increasing cycle after cycle thanks to all of the hatches I have up here. All right, let's see what is inside this vending machine. Bubbles! No, nobody looked. Darn it. Okay. Oh, nice. You can see the auto sweeper. It's working well. It's conveying the polluted dirt right out of the water sieves. I'm also receiving from the automatic storage retrieval system down here sand, which is really, really nice to see. If you take a look at the conveyor, yes, it's packed full of it. We're just about ready to fire this thing up. Yes, we have power. I've got a fair bit of hydrogen ready to go. Not a ton, but I do definitely have some. Aha! Somebody has opened up the vending machine, and we have a couple of rations. That's nice. One nutrient bar. Just one. Okay, so maybe not a whole lot. Gossman's like, I'm gonna get a taste of that. That rare food find. Check it out. Tasty. On the topic of heat transfer and things like that, I've actually thought about using chlorine or maybe phosphorus to try to recreate what is a heat pipe, where it actually has a phase change from a hot source. So it would go to a gas or something, then get cold, and then condense back down and go back down. I don't know. I thought about that. Thought it might be kind of an interesting thing to try to build inside of Oxygen Not Included. Not that it'd be super useful, but I know it could be used down here to transfer heat away from something like lava up through a big chimney, and then it will transfer or deliver its heat and then cool back down far enough to where it would actually turn back into a liquid or a solid, and then drop back down to the bottom where it would then reheat. Phosphorus would actually work pretty well for that. Matter of fact, I've kind of used that a couple of times, but not in such a way that it's actually a heat pipe. Just thinking of different things to build. Okay, so connected to this shutoff valve, I need to have another thermal sensor, And then we'll just connect a little bit of an automation wire between that. And it looks like the general temperature in this area is negative 28 or so degrees. So I'll probably want to set this to start pumping that gas or letting that gas through once it reaches, let's say, negative 20 or 25. I could probably go a little bit lower. Ooh, and it looks like we're all built down here. All right, so I need one more sensor inside of here, and that's going to be a thermal sensor. I want to get an idea of just how hot this farm is, and as we can see inside of here, it's actually 37 degrees Celsius, which is really hot. So I want to make sure that I can allow this shutoff valve to be open when it's above a certain temperature. So I'll probably set that to 25 degrees Celsius, because I don't need to cool this farm, you know, if it's not above a certain temperature, right? If it's already cold, we can just store up back here some nice cold hydrogen. And since it's inside of a Abyssite, it probably won't really warm up that much. And even if it does, I mean, it just runs through and then gets cold and comes back. So if this is above 25 degrees Celsius, then that's going to be true, allowing this valve to be open. And once that hydrogen is reached, let's say 15 degrees Celsius, then I'm going to convey it away. So it'll go from negative 25 to positive 15. All right, so everything is plugged in and piped up. Let's go ahead and give this a try. And it also looks like I have just about enough for a full charge here. So if this goes below negative 25, then I'm going to start conveying this hydrogen over to the right. At this point, I'm just going to shut this off. I don't need it anymore. So I don't need more hydrogen inside the system. I just need enough for one charge of cooling. Otherwise, it's just going to stack up in a pipe and really do nothing for me at this point. So here comes that hydrogen, and it's entering the system, in this case at negative 19.6 degrees. And we can see that the temperature is starting to cool down. Now, the only annoying thing I'm seeing here is that it's not moving in one continuous motion. I really want that to just be one line of really large chunks, I guess, so large quantities. What I'm trying to say is, if this moves at less than 1 kilogram of hydrogen, it'll actually kind of heat up by the time it gets to the farm. So I want these to be full charges moving through each location here, and not this little like 13 grams of hydrogen. That's not going to do me any good. So you can see here the hydrogen is cooling down, and now it's conveying out. Okay, so I'm seeing a problem right now, is that all of the hydrogen is traveling to the bottom. It's not actually going left or right out of this system. I think I'm going to let this heat up a little bit more as well. 23 degrees. How about that? You know what? It looks like I have an opportunity to move quite a bit more hydrogen here. So I'm going to go ahead and allow this to pump quite a bit more. I'll try to build up a double charge so that one is cooling down over here on the left, while the other is over here cooling on the right. So each time the system runs, I take about a degree off that mealwood plant. So it won't be too long here before this stuff's up and running again. Looks like I've added a little bit to the ladder here. I want to get down here to the oil, so I can finally get some plastics built. So let's go ahead and build that up just a little bit. We can also put a oil cap thing on top of that so that we can actually start to extract that and maybe power up a different power plant. I do want to explore to see what's inside of here too. Aha, that was the other thing I was going to do. I was going to work on this ranch over here on the right. See what I can do to give these critters a little something to do. Let's see here. Can they jump 2 tiles? Yes, they can. So we'll just give them a little obstacle course, or a jumping gym, or whatever we want to call it. So one disadvantage to this is that I'm actually reducing the room size by adding tiles in it. However, I can expand the room as well. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm increasing the area that these critters can actually live in, as far as what tiles they're on, or they can get to, I should say. But I'm reducing the total amount of space. Yeah, you get what I'm doing. It's a little weird. Uh-oh, Bubbles got stuck over here. Oh no! There you go. Now you're free. All right, so here we go. Now a mealwood plant is starting to grow again, so that's off to a good start. Let's see that the temperature of this plant, well, we could just see the temperature inside of here is starting to drop. At this point, I do have some extra hydrogen, so I don't really know what to do with it, so I'm just going to store it up in here. But once I have this thing uncovered, I should have a spot to actually dump some extra hydrogen to really get a lot of cooling potential. Once I uncover this thing, that is. You can just see it peeking through right there. Anti-entropy. Entropy. Anti-entropy thermal nullifier. What a tongue twister that one is. So negative 25 degrees Celsius might be too much to ask for. I'm going to take this to just negative 20. That should allow things to cycle a fair bit more often. So I should definitely be able to cool down this farm a little bit faster if I can cycle gas more frequently. Yeah, look at that go. So this was all the area that was kind of back here. So it's got to cool down, get kind of a temperature overlay. Everything's kind of cold at this point. Everything just goes to blue. And there it conveys out. So you can kind of see how that's staggered. Now this, guess I got to rework the gas pipes here. This just isn't working. It wants to work. It just is not. So I'll do that number. Perfect. I love that. I love the way that works. So you can see that all of these mealwood plants down here where it's, coming in at the very coldest temperature, those are all starting to get down to a nice good temperature. I think a couple more cycles and this thing will be up and running just like it was beforehand, which really means I think we've solved our problem. I did have to kind of build a farm up here in order to get past that, hump. However, I was also able to get over here to the left side and actually start cooking up a little bit of sleet wheat. For right now, I think I'm going to let the sleet wheat grow naturally and just kind of harvest it as I come across it. Sleet wheat is actually a little bit more difficult to grow, but we'll eventually solve that. And also, I want to make sure that I uncover this thermal nullifier over here, because that's going to be very, very useful. Let's go ahead and just crank up the priority on that. Get bubbles on over there. It's just so we can see it before this episode ends. Yes! Amazing! There it is, waiting for some hydrogen. So what this really is just like a giant wheezewort. So, could definitely make use of that. Surround this with hydrogen. Kind of put a loop around it so we can kind of, or whatever, we just want to pump through there. Is it all just hydrogen? It's really all it takes. It's not much to it. So my plan from here is to obviously have a couple of cooling loops that'll run through this thing and we'll power it up and really take out a lot of heat. The other thing is also to have some refining equipment over here on the left for things like oil, where I can convert that into plastics and then collect that and then convey that through a very long conveyor back over here so I can use that in my base and really start to pimp it out a little bit. I mean, right now we've got a bunch of tiles, but the real ballers, they're running around on plastic or refined metal. We got to get there. I also got to get to space. I mean, I have yet to do any. I've dug everywhere except for up at this point, so I got to make a higher priority of that. Oh, yes, and before we actually leave here today, let me just go ahead and finish this thing off over here. So I'll increase the priority on that, and we'll see if this has any sort of positive effect on my little critters. See, look, the farm is now back up and running, and it's just real nice. Take a look at the temperature. Bam, look at that. I might want to just put this to like 27 or something like that, It doesn't need to be that cold. As a matter of fact, the plants are actually quite a bit cooler than the farm itself, or at least the air temperature of the farm. And that's all because of this comment up here, where I'm directly cooling the plant by positioning that radiant pipe directly on the plant right there. Temperature-wise, I may have raised the local temperature right around this radiator a little bit, but as soon as you go just a little bit away, it's still negative 28, negative 30. I mean, there's just so much mass around here, so this little bit of gas isn't really going to have any effect on this humongous area of coldness. But we can definitely improve this system from what it is today to where it will be in the future. So if we take a look at the debuffs for this hatch right here, you can see that it is, expecting a little bit, but it doesn't really get overcrowded until it's down here next to a bunch of these other, critters as well. So by letting them hop around and kind of space themselves out a little bit more, that seems to actually work. So that's what MW2366 was talking about. Technically, you can expand space outside of the rancher station / room to not get the overcrowded debuff. The total amount of like airspace or the area around them. So once they have a larger area to wander, they can avoid getting the overcrowded debuff. So I took his advice and left those doors open. Matter of fact, I even added a second door a little bit higher up to where they can kind of, you know, jump all over the place. We'll see how this works out. I mean, you know, the stable is a little bit smaller than it was beforehand, but still seems to be working out pretty good. Everybody's making a mess again. Why? Why? Duplicates. Just because I have way too much water. All right, so there you have it, guys. That was my first cooling loop of many. So we'll have to see where we go from here. But for right now, I think this was pretty cool. Thanks for watching, guys. If I've earned your subscription, then thanks so much for that. Have a great day, guys. Stay awesome. Peace. Brothgar out.